Welcome to our presentation about paying for school using your veteran education benefits. This is a CalTAP sponsored presentation presented by Swords to Plowshares. We're going to talk about education benefits, we're going to talk about GI Bill, Voc Rehab, Yellow Ribbon Program, and additional resources. Talking about educational benefits, we're going to divide it up between talking about benefits specifically for veterans and then education benefits for family. When we talk about education benefits, a lot of education benefits can overlap for both veterans and for families. So when we're discussing a lot of the following programs that are mainly specified towards veterans, also note that things such as the GI Bill, when we talk about transferability, can transfer over to veteran families as well. There are also unique programs for veteran family members when we talk about educational assistance. There can be various unique state-provided benefits. There's also scholarship programs such as the John D. Fry Scholarship Program, which works specifically for surviving spouses and children of service members who died in the line of duty post 9/11, and it operates exactly like the post 9/11 GI Bill as well. There's a lot of information out there for you to specifically look at when we see about providing additional education benefits. In California specifically, we can see California College Tuition Fee Waiver for Veteran Dependents. And so it's waiver for mandatory system-wide tuition and fees at any state of California community college, California State University, or University of California campuses. You can go to the CalVet website to find more about eligibility regarding those education benefits for family members. Now, when we talk about educational benefits for veterans, we're talking about the Montgomery GI Bill, Voc Rehab, VA Work Study, Post 9/11 GI Bill, Yellow Ribbon Program, and Veteran Scholarships and Grants. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of each of these over the course of the presentation, but what's important to acknowledge here is that there's a wide range of benefits that are available for veterans when it comes to education, and there's different ways to utilize them in a way that can optimize your educational career. Continuing on our educational benefits for veterans, things that are more state-specific can be things such as the CalVet College Fee Waiver for Veteran Dependents, which is a fantastic thing, especially for those of you that have children and who may be looking into attending any one of the institutions within the state of California. Military spouse career advancement accounts as well. GI Bill transferability, which is important, and most veterans already have an idea of, but there's some specifics about GI transferability that you may or may not know about. And then Dependents Education Assistance Program, along with state-provided education benefits. Shifting from that broad overview into specifics, let's talk about the GI Bill. Now, there's a lot of details that we have to go into when we talk about the GI Bill. GI Bill assistance may be used for college degree and certificate programs. This is what we usually think of when we think about the GI Bill being used. Co-op training, technical or vocational courses, flight training, apprenticeships or on-the-job training, high-tech training, licensing and certification test, entrepreneurship training, correspondence courses, and certain entrance examinations. Undergraduate degrees can take 4 to 5 years to complete, and sometimes longer when you have to factor in that you are transitioning into the civilian world. The Post 9/11 GI Bill, the Montgomery GI Bill, and the Forever GI Bill provide 36 months of educational benefits. Additionally, veterans may receive up to 48 months of benefits if they qualify for another education benefit. For example, a transfer from the Montgomery GI Bill to Post 9/11 GI Bill. Members who served on active duty and in the reserves after their previous discharge can extend benefits by applying for the Montgomery GI Bill Selective Reserve option. The Montgomery GI Bill and post 9/11 had expiration dates to use the GI Bill funds, known as the use it or lose it dates, which was typically 10 to 15 years. Unfortunately, for some people, they have reached those dates, and that means they no longer are eligible for their GI Bill benefits. However, for the more recently separated veterans and service members who are currently in, you are now under the Forever GI Bill, and that does not have the use it or lose it dates, which is absolutely amazing and fantastic. The GI Bill education funds cover the cost of tuition, but do not represent an actual dollar amount. An allowance for housing, tuition, fees, and books are included in the overall benefits provided. Online schools are based on the national average for tuition. Note, veterans must have received an honorable discharge to be eligible for the GI Bill. If you've received less than a fully honorable discharge, check out our core pathway modules. Here's some tips for basic allowance for housing tips, or BAH tips. Now, something to clarify before we begin. As we know, the GI Bill does not necessarily mean you have 100% of the benefits that you were given. You are given a certain rating, whether it could be 70%, 80% on up. And that also impacts your BAH, meaning that your housing allowance isn't necessarily going to be 100% for whatever zip code you might necessarily be in, but you're going to be getting a percentage of that amount. And so that's important to keep in mind when we talk about the rest of this slide. When you're trying to find out what your living situation is going to look like, whether it be an undergrad or grad, and you're intending on going to school full-time, and honestly, if you're going to school full-time, it's definitely better not to be employed during that. You definitely can, depending on the circumstances. But it's better that you're able to treat higher education like it's a full-time job. So you can look at the school that you're going to. You can find out through different BAH calculators how much money you're probably going to roughly make about a month. Then find out what the average rent of where the school is located and determine whether available housing is going to be difficult to find. In some places, you're going to have an easier time, and in other places, you're going to have a far more difficult time. If we're thinking about the Bay Area can be challenging when it comes to housing. Use the GI Bill comparison tool to find the basic housing allowance, and then see if it can cover that rent on top of other expenses. And when we think of other expenses, it's important to note that, having an emergency savings or emergency funds should be something that can be considered under your BAH. Because if you're living on that fixed income, and then something that's an emergency happens during that time period, that can throw your higher education career and life out of whack. Do you currently have dependents? Or if you have kids, what schools are your children going to be attending? And have you developed a financial plan, and have you considered where you might work if it is necessary? There's challenges that also come with having to live off of BAH. Some landlords don't consider BAH income. If you've already got an apartment and you're not necessarily worried about having to re-verify your income with your landlord, then that could be fine if you're going to school within the same area. But if you're moving into a new area, as people often do, to pursue their higher education program, degree, you name it, some landlords don't consider BAH income, and that might put you at a disadvantage. Couple that with the cost of housing, maybe even more than the BAH is going to be able to handle, it can make life a lot more difficult. And what some folks don't know, or they may not think about ahead of time, is that there's often gap months when school isn't in session where veterans don't receive BAH. So we're talking about, hey, you're on winter break, your BAH is going to be reduced. You're not going to school during the summer at all, you're not getting paid BAH during the summer at all. That's also more difficult because let's say you were treating higher education as a means of, hey, I'm going to do this full-time, I'm going to be going to school full-time. It's hard to find an employer that's just going to employ you for those off periods or those gap periods. So that's something that you might want to try and preemptively think about, whether that's having a seasonal employer on lockdown or being able to work a type of employment that allows you that flexibility, or having those savings built up So when those time periods hit, you've got the money to handle it, even if you aren't necessarily making an income in that time period. All right, now let's talk about the vocational and rehabilitation program. So even though shorthand, a lot of the times you might see people online talking about it, or if we as veterans are talking about it person to person, we might simply refer to it as Voc Rehab. The actual name for this program is the Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Program, VR&E. The thing about this is it is very much an employment program. This is a program that is mainly focused on service-connected veterans and trying to help them gain meaningful employment. What they're going to do is, when you're interested in getting the benefits from this program, is you're going to have a VR&E counselor who's going to do a comprehensive evaluation to determine abilities, skills, and interests for employment. And it's basically a rundown of what you're capable of and how you're able to work in a field that suits you. This is vocational counseling and rehabilitation planning for employment services. These employment services are things such as job training, job seeking skills, resume development, and other work readiness assistance. So it's important to understand this program as kind of like a total kit that's trying to address whatever issues you may have when it comes to seeking employment. It includes assistance in finding and keeping a job, including the use of special employer incentives and job accommodations. On-the-job training, apprenticeships, and non-paid work opportunities are also under this program. Post-secondary training at a college, vocational, technical, or business school. A lot of times people might think Voc Rehab is something, a layer that they can add on when it comes to their GI Bill, and that's certainly not the case or guarantee, but it is something that can definitely line up with that if your chosen career and your professional pathway seem to meet that need to go into grad school. It's also about supportive rehabilitation services, including case management, counseling, and medical referrals. Independent living services, additionally, if you're unable to work due to the severity of your disabilities. Now with that overview, let's go into the Yellow Ribbon Program. The Yellow Ribbon Program is for private schools and non-resident students. Your tuition and fees costs may be higher if you are attending a private school or attending a public school as a non-resident student. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about the GI Bill, when we talk about the GI Bill covering tuition, it's covering the cost of 100% in-state tuition. And that's the cap. So if you are coming and you are having to pay for out-of-state tuition, or you are paying for a private school that is more expensive than the in-state school, we're talking about tuition fees that are potentially higher than the cap that's provided for by the GI Bill. The Yellow Ribbon Program comes in and is basically meant to address for that gap. Yellow Ribbon Program isn't a guaranteed thing. It's a thing that schools have to willingly participate in to make additional funds available for your education program without an additional charge to your GI Bill entitlement. Each of these schools that choose to participate partners with the VA and agrees to pay a certain portion of the tuition for a specific number of students. So these are the schools pulling from their own pockets in order to be able to help create this Yellow Ribbon Program to allow for veterans to attend their school. The VA in turn then matches that amount and issues payments directly to the institution. Schools will have varied levels of contribution, so the Yellow Ribbon Program doesn't necessarily look the same at every private school that you might be interested in, but if you do your research, you'll find that many schools cover the complete cost of tuition with the Yellow Ribbon Program. Now into resources. if you have questions related to possible educational benefits, the VBA has a call line available exclusively to veterans to answer questions about the benefits. You can reach them at 1-888-442-4551. Press 0 for a representative. It is important to keep in mind that this range of benefits that we've presented to you here over the course of this presentation is that benefits eligibility depends on a student's service history. Veterans may qualify for different programs based on time they've served or other factors. VBA can help you determine eligibility and find the best program for your needs. So there might be cases where maybe you ran out on the GI Bill and it was use it or lose it, and unfortunately you lost it. But then let's say you're also service connected. Voc Rehab is definitely a much more viable option for you to actually pursue and go down in order to enhance your educational career and improve your quality of life. You might not have Voc Rehab, but you also might have GI Bill, you might have a whole host of different things. So this isn't a full set of benefits that are guaranteed, or this is the benefits that every veteran has accessibility towards. Each case is a little bit unique and different depending on what's been going on, but it's worth pursuing, and it's also worth researching more about because these benefits are fantastic. They're worth all of the effort in order to get. Let's talk about next steps. See the documents that are accompanying this module for more information on education resources for veterans. Outside of this particular education module, we also have modules and other sections that are also to help benefit you on your journey to receiving your benefits. Hopefully this has been an informative presentation for you. Thank you for your attendance and good luck on your journey.